Welcome, brave souls, to the Dark Whisperer's House of Horror, where shadows dance and secrets lurk.
The house seemed alive, its walls creaking and groaning as though something, or someone, was moving within them. The girls stood frozen in the foyer, their breaths shallow, trying to comprehend the chilling atmosphere surrounding them. "Did you hear it?" Lily whispered, her voice trembling. That laugh, that voice, it came from inside the walls. Emma nodded, but she didn't trust her own voice to speak. She felt a cold sweat on her forehead, and the hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. Every corner of the house seemed to hold a secret, something ancient and dark. She tried to focus, her eyes darting to the portraits that lined the walls. The figures in the paintings stared back at her, their expressions shifting ever so slightly, as though they were aware of her presence. A soft, almost imperceptible scratching noise echoed from the attic above, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps. The air grew denser, suffocating them. Sarah, ever the skeptic, looked toward the staircase that spiraled up to the attic door. "I'm going to check it out," she said, though her voice quivered. "Don't," Emma pleaded, grabbing her arm. "It's not safe." But Sarah pulled free, determined to prove there was nothing to fear. She ascended the stairs, the wooden steps creaking under her weight. With each step she took, the temperature seemed to drop, her breath coming out in visible puffs. She reached the attic door, her hand resting on the tarnished doorknob. For a moment, the house was still. Then, the knob turned on its own, the door creaking open. Inside, the attic was dark, filled with the smell of mildew and decay. The beam of Sarah's flashlight caught on dusty old furniture, forgotten relics from a bygone era. But it wasn't the furniture that caught her attention, it was the shadows. Long, dark shapes writhed in the corners, twisting and shifting as if they had a life of their own. And there, at the far end of the room, a figure stood motionless, its face obscured by the darkness. The air grew heavier, the whispers returning, this time louder and more urgent. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she stepped forward, her flashlight shaking in her hand. The figure began to move toward her, its movements unnaturally slow yet inevitable, like the weight of fate itself. "Sarah!" Emma screamed from below, but it was too late. The last thing Sarah saw was the figure's eyes, a pair of hollow sockets, voids of darkness, before the shadows swallowed her whole. The girls huddled together, fear rooting them in place. Suddenly, the books on the shelves flew off, pages fluttering wildly. One landed open on the floor, displaying a diagram of a human body, but it wasn't scientific. It was grotesque, detailing twisted experiments. Emma picked up the book, her hands trembling. This man, he wasn't just a scientist. He experimented on people. The whispers grew louder, overlapping into a cacophony of warnings. Images of the townspeople flashed through their minds, men, women, children, their faces twisted in agony. "They're trying to warn us," Sarah realized. "He killed them all in some kind of explosion." A sudden crash upstairs made them jump. They climbed the stairs, compelled by an unseen force. At the end of the hall was a locked door. The key in Emma's pocket grew warm, as if urging her forward. The door creaked open, revealing a laboratory frozen in chaos. Shattered glass and burned equipment littered the room, the wall scarred with blackened streaks from an old explosion. An acrid, metallic scent hung heavy in the air, mingling with the faint coppery tang of blood. In the center of the room stood a figure, a translucent, malevolent ghost with hollow eyes and a twisted grin. "The scientist. You've come to join my work," he sneered, his voice like shattered glass scraping against steel. His form flickered, pulsating with an unnatural light that made the shadows in the room writhe as though alive. The girls froze, terror rooting them in place as the ghost began to advance. His feet didn't touch the ground, gliding eerily over the debris. With a wave of his spectral hand, the door behind them slammed shut, sealing their escape. The air turned icy, their breath visible in the dim glow of the ghost's aura. "You've disrupted my experiments," the ghost hissed. "But no matter. I need new subjects." Emma's eyes darted around the room, desperate for anything that could help. On a nearby shelf, vials of strange liquids glimmered faintly. One vial, labeled counteragent, caught her attention. She edged toward it, her heart pounding. The ghost raised a hand, and the room erupted into chaos. Furniture levitated, crashing into the walls. Shards of glass whirled through the air like deadly missiles. Lily screamed as a chair hurtled past her, narrowly missing her head. Sarah ducked, her back pressed against the wall. "We have to stop him," Emma shouted, grabbing the vial. The ghost turned his hollow gaze toward her, his twisted grin widening. "You think that will save you?" he mocked. With a flick of his wrist, the vial flew from Emma's hand, shattering against the floor. A hissing sound filled the room as the liquid sizzled against the wood. But Emma's quick glance revealed another vial, identical to the first, hidden behind a cluster of jars. Summoning her courage, she lunged for it. The ghost let out a deafening roar, and the room shook violently. The walls cracked, and the ceiling sagged ominously. The ghost lunged at Emma, his translucent form flickering violently. Just as his clawed hands reached for her, she hurled the vial with all her strength. It struck his chest and shattered, the liquid spilling over his glowing form. The reaction was instantaneous. The ghost let out an ear-piercing wail, his form contorting as tendrils of smoke rose from his body. His twisted grin melted into a mask of agony as he began to disintegrate, his light dimming with every second. The girls shielded their eyes as a blinding flash filled the room. The sound of Sarah's scream echoed through the house, but Emma and Lily could only stare up at the staircase, paralyzed by fear. Emma's mind raced. Had Sarah truly been taken? Or had she simply vanished into the madness of this place? "Sarah! Come back!" Lily called, her voice breaking. Without a word, Emma began to ascend the staircase, her every step a struggle against the heavy air that pressed down on them. Lily followed, though she hesitated at every creak of the old floorboards. At the top, the door to the attic stood ajar, a sliver of inky darkness visible inside. "Sarah!" Emma called again, her voice trembling. But there was no answer, only silence. Lily reached for the door, but before she could touch the knob, a chill swept through the hall, and the faintest whisper danced through the air. Emma spun around, her heart hammering. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Lily nodded, her face pale. "We need to leave." But Emma shook her head, her eyes locked on the attic door. There was something inside, something she needed to see, something that might explain all of this. The door to the attic had been locked. No matter how hard they pushed or pulled, it refused to budge. Panic surged through Emma and Lily, the claustrophobic space closing in around them. The shadows in the corners seemed to grow darker, more oppressive, and the air was thick with an unbearable tension. "There's no way out," Lily whispered, her voice quivering with fear. "We're stuck." Emma's mind raced, desperate for a solution. But as she scanned the room, her eyes fell on the mirror once again, its surface still rippling with an unnatural energy. The image of Sarah had vanished, but something else was happening, something darker. The reflection now showed the house itself, distorted and twisted, its walls seemingly alive, shifting and pulsing with malevolent energy. The whispers grew louder, now discernible, a cacophony of voices speaking in languages Emma couldn't understand. She pressed her hand against the mirror, and for a moment, everything went still. The whispers ceased, the house seemed to hold its breath. And then, in the reflection, she saw it. A door, hidden in plain sight, had appeared in the far corner of the attic. It was old, made of dark wood, and adorned with strange symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. Emma didn't need to ask Lily if she saw it, because she knew she did. The door was their only chance, but the very thought of approaching it filled Emma with dread. "Do you think it's a way out?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. Emma didn't respond. She only nodded, and with one final glance at the now still mirror, the two of them walked toward the door, unsure of what awaited them on the other side.
You've made it through the house of horror, for now. But remember, the darkness is never far, and the whispers, they're always watching. Subscribe to Dark Whispers if you dare. and prepare for the next part.